Hello Gnomes, my name is Chance, welcome to my Spellbook, and thank you so much for tuning into the fourth and currently final episode of the Gnome subrace series. At least currently. I really hope Wizards of the Coast adds in more, because I find what's here to be a little bit plain Jane relative to a lot of the other races and sub-races in 5e. In any case, we're going out with a bang. We're going out with the Rock Gnome, which is found in the Player's Handbook, and for a Player's Handbook sub-race, actually has quite a bit going on. Before we dive into its traits, I just want to say, please check out the full playlist. This video isn't necessarily going to make a ton of sense on its own. At the very least, check out the Gnome video, just so you know everything that the Gnome race gets. If you'd like to do that, you can do so by clicking on that little eye icon in the top corner there, and then selecting the playlist from the drop-down menu. Alternatively, you can wait until the end of the video and click on the relevant end screen. In any case, let's dive right into the Rock Gnome by checking out its traits here. In terms of your ability score improvement, you'll gain a +1 to Constitution, which is really fantastic. Regardless of which class you're playing, Constitution is almost always one of your paramount stats. The only real exception is maybe the Rogue, especially if you're playing a further back ranged character, then maybe Con isn't super important to you, but outside of that it's almost always required. You'll also gain Artificer's Lore. When you make a history check related to magic items, alchemical objects, or technological devices, you can add twice your proficiency bonus instead of any proficiency bonus you'd normally apply. This is essentially expertise when it comes to these really niche checks. This is very similar to the Rock Dwarf, which is pretty cool. I'm actually really excited about this, and I'm surprised I don't see it used more often in games, albeit gnomes aren't necessarily the most popular race, so there is that, but still, this is a really cool ability to have, especially if you don't have someone with Detect Magic, or even if you do have someone with Detect Magic. Detect Magic doesn't inherently tell you what the object or item does, it only tells you the school of magic. So if you don't happen to have something like Identify, for example, then this trait is super useful. Even when it comes to things that aren't necessarily magical in nature, alchemical objects, for example, could very easily just refer to potions, and that could open up your game to things like poisons, certain bombs or grenades, or poison-tipped arrows, things of that nature could be really super useful. And then technological devices might not even mean weapons, it could mean obelisks or shrines or ancient technology in general. I think that'd be really cool. Discuss this with your Dungeon Master, of course. There's a lot for them to work with here if they choose to, but that's ultimately their call to make. Now let's move on to the other trait the Rock Gnome gets, Tinkerer. This is actually one of the more interesting traits I've seen in any sub-race. You have proficiency with the Artisan's tools, namely Tinkerer's tools. Using those tools, you can spend 1 hour and 10 gold piece worth of material to construct a tiny clockwork device. It has an AC of 5 and 1 hit point. The device ceases to function after 24 hours unless you spend 1 hour repairing it to keep the device functioning, or when you use your action to dismantle it. At that time, you can reclaim the materials used to create it. You can have up to 3 such devices active at a time. This is really neat. It provides some examples for what those devices it can be. The first is a clockwork toy that resembles a animal, monster, person, something of that nature. And when placed on the ground, the toy moves 5 feet for each of your turn in a random direction and makes noises appropriate for the creature it represents. You can also make a fire starter, which is pretty much what it sounds like, a device that produces a miniature flame which you can use to light candles, torches, campfires. Using the device requires your action. Or you can make a music box. When opened, this music box plays a single song at moderate volume. The box stops playing when it reaches the song's end or when it is closed. I think this is awesome. All of these are really cool to me, especially at those early levels where odds are you're not going to survive for very long unless you employ some more creative tactics. It is a little disappointing that there's no way for these to scale up. However, a Dungeon Master might be a little bit lenient in that area. That being said, however, if you have any cool ideas for other trinkets to make or other gadgets you might be able to construct, let me know down beneath in the comments section. Now let's move on to my personal thoughts regarding the rock gnome. I think these guys obviously make perfect artificers. It's literally in the name of one of their traits, and they make these little gadgets. It really does suit them. Maybe a clan artisan is as well for a background makes sense for them. That being said, I just think they're super neat. There's a lot you can do with them, and they're really versatile simply because a +1 to Constitution is really great. Artificer's lore makes sense in almost any campaign, and Tinkerer makes sense in almost any campaign as well. However, I do think the Artificer is what they're more geared towards. Very interesting stuff. As I mentioned earlier, this is the last video currently for the Gnome series, so might as well give you guys a quick heads up as to what's happening next. Next, we're going to be diving into the half-elves and then the halflings from there. There are a couple half-elf variants we're going to have to cover, so that series should go on for a little bit longer than the gnome did. Sadly, there's just not a lot of attention that the gnome seems to have been given in recent iterations, which is a little disappointing, but whatever, it is what it is. I know a couple people in the comments section are gnome mains, and they really do like them, especially as it relates to casters. However, I don't know, it's an interesting race, might make for some cool thematic and roleplay opportunities. However, for the most part, I still think they're kind of meh, to be honest. The Rock Gnome and the Mark of the Scribe Gnome are probably two of the better ones, however, I don't know. But yeah, so half-elf, then halfling, and then we'll keep going through the player handbook races and sub-races, and then we'll eventually move on and cover the supplements as well. Also, I've been thinking about creating a new channel kind of recently. I'm making a video explaining what it would look like now, but if you have any feedback, let me know. There's a community tab post related to that, so feel free to check that out as well. In any case, if you'd like to gain access to a free one-shot, please feel free to do so by checking out the guild hall and using code WELCOME to get yours. And if you have any thoughts, questions, comments, or concerns related to the Rock Gnome, or any character ideas, concepts, or stories, feel free to put those down beneath as well. And feel free to check out the pinned comment to see my other channels. Who knows, maybe you might be interested. That being said, I hope you all have a wonderful day, and of course, happy adventuring, everyone.